Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Montclair. I'm your host, Shane Paul Neal. This is the second of a two-part episode where we've been discussing the Montclair Film Festival, which this week celebrates its 10-year anniversary. This episode, I'll be talking to Evelyn Colbert, who is the president of the Board of Trustees for Montclair Film. We'll be discussing the organization's beginnings, its synergy with the town of Montclair itself, as well as the need for more diverse voices in film. Also, Montclair Local is still working towards our goal of raising $230,000 this quarter. If you would like to support Montclair Local so that we can provide you with the news and information you seek, including shows like Our Montclair, you can go to MontclairLocal.news/donations. And thank you in advance for your support. Well, first of all, thank you for being here.
Sure.
Like a lot of what we do here live is coming in at the last minute. Like, can we, you got time? Love you. Awesome. So starting from the beginning, how did you become involved with Montclair Film?
Wow. Well, it was a long, I think it could be 12 years ago. It was at least
Mhm.
11 years ago. I had coffee with Bob Feinberg,
Mhm.
and he said he had the idea of creating a nonprofit film festival in Montclair, and was I interested in helping?
Mhm.
And I said yes. So anyway, I came home and talked to my husband, and we both felt that it was a great idea for Montclair.
Mhm.
Stephen and I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, and there's an arts festival in Charleston called the Spoleto Festival. And we were both in high school when it started, and or even younger. And so we witnessed the impact an arts festival can have on a community. So our thought was that would be a wonderful thing for Montclair. So then we hosted a party at our house to basically pitch the idea and try to get support that way. And then we were kind of off to the races. We formed a board, and we have one of our founding board members, Brian Clarkson, was our first treasurer, and he had the brilliant insight to convince us to raise some money before we started the festival. We were kind of like, let's just have a festival. It'll be fine. What could go wrong? But luckily, we had a fundraiser first. We raised some money. That enabled us to hire our first co-executive directors. And then we had our first festival. And then the rest is history.
So to that end, what about Montclair makes it a good fit for a film festival? There are a lot of towns that, could potentially, like you talk about, New York City, obviously, and even Newark. Montclair is a very unique town. What within it did you see that, hey, a film festival here makes sense?
Well, I guess I can speak. We moved here, my husband and I and our children moved here in 2000. And what drew us to Montclair was the fact that it already had an arts community. There's the Montclair Art Museum. At the time, Luna Stage, a nonprofit theater, was in Montclair. There's the Montclair State University is here. So it's a community with a presence and a center, not just a bedroom commuting community. And then the other thing that we both knew, it was kind of interesting. I don't think we had quite appreciated when my husband, Stephen, started the Colbert Report on Comedy Central, and he started hiring people quite by accident and not intentionally and not even knowing it. I think he hired something like 7 people, and they all lived in Montclair. And this wasn't just comedic writers. He hired a writer, he hired a set designer, he hired a producer, he hired the camera guy, and they all were in Montclair. And we used to laugh and say, there's a Montclair bus going into Comedy Central every day. And so I think I knew, and I think Bob Feinberg knew, that this is a great community with lots of media people. They say half of the New York Times lives in Montclair. So it seemed like the right place to have this kind of festival. I also know that there's a long history of independent cinema, the Claridge Cinema, which we are lucky enough to be taking over the lease of and starting to operate as of Thursday, has a long history of independent cinema in New Jersey. And so I think that it was fair to assume there was a discerning audience that people would be receptive to the idea. It was a gamble, but that's what made us think it would work in Montclair.
Speaking of the Claridge, that all seemed to, at least on this end, seemed to have come together fairly quickly. So the shutdown happens in March 2020, Bowtie comes out, and not long after, we find out Montclair Film is going to take over the space. Can you talk about that process a little bit?
Well, I don't think I can go into a lot of details except to say I'm glad it seemed short to you. It did not seem short to us. It seemed like a long time in terms of, there was a lot of negotiating. There's a lot of working around. We institutionally had to make sure we could do it, which means lots of financial projections and gathering data from other art house cinemas around the country. Tom Hall is a founding member of something called the Art House Convergence, which is a member organization of art house cinemas around the United States. And so we gathered a lot of information from similar organizations to see, what kind of projections we could have. So we spent a lot of time investigating and researching and then negotiating and all of that. But I'm glad that it seemed like it was quick. That's good.
I mean, just on having done none of the work, it seemed like it was lightning fast.
That's the way it should be. Boom, here we go.
That's the benefit I have, right?
Right.
So I've moved here about 7 years ago. I'm one of those dreaded Brooklyn expats. And in my time here, I've watched you go through a flood in 2018, a pandemic, obviously this last year. And then when Ida hit, I walked past the Montclair Film headquarters and I saw a little bit of damage. Then I heard about the Claridge damage as well. I'm going to use a pun. How did the organization manage to weather these storms?
Well, I mean, I guess I could, use another pun. Or I actually, this morning on a phone call, I said, it reminds me of that song, and I can't remember who sings it, is I got knocked down, but I got up again.
Oh God, yeah.
That
what is that?
We get knocked down, but we get up again.
I can't remember what. Yeah. Now it's gonna be in my head all day. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So anyway, I think that honestly, it's kind of in our DNA that we're just determined. The people involved with this organization, we're all passionately committed. We give, as board members, we certainly give of our resources and our time, but we're passionate, and so we are, and we have an incredible staff. Our staff is so dedicated and spent so much time getting over each one of those hurdles that you talked about. The first flood was hugely disappointing because we had not even been in our building very long. Then we changed our floor, and we thought we waterproofed some things, and we really thought we'd made it waterproof, but we didn't expect 5 feet of water, which is what we got from Ida. That's a whole, I don't know how you protect against a river coming through your building, but we're still going to try. We are going to change, if we can, the doors and put in like waterproof floors, and we're actually trying to be as positive as we can. And we hope that this building now can become our education center now that we've moved over to the Claridge and have all our programming at the Claridge. It actually gives us an opportunity to expand the space, which is what our education system needs. It needs more space. So that's, in some ways, we're trying to be glass half full about that. Right. And the pandemic, our staff was incredibly resourceful. We figured out how to put on a festival virtually last year with, we educated, or not we, because I didn't do it. They educated themselves on what it would require technically to set up basically an app that you could then download the films and watch from home. We did drive-ins. So, we're just a determined bunch of people, I think.
Right. And obviously this year you're doing vaccine, proof of vaccines, masks, reduced occupancies, all the things. So still a level of responsibility, even with being the doors being back open. And
we have in all our venues, because we did it in the Claridge, and then the Wellmont already had, and MKA already had made the necessary changes to the HVAC, so there's better ventilation and air circulation. And we have done huge deep cleaning at the Claridge. And yes, everybody has to be vaccinated and masked. So we're as safe as we hope we can, as we think we can be.
Right. One of the things that I find happens with a organization that has the kind of growth that Montclair Film has is still being attached to the community. You already mentioned one part of it in terms of education programs that you offer. That I get the emails all the time, and I'm very jealous of the film stuff programs you have for the kids and everything else. Like I
Me
wish I
too.
had that when I was a kid.
I know.
But in what other ways are you tying back to the community? Because the festival is always already headed in a direction where it can almost outgrow the community if you let it.
Right, right. Well, I mean, that's an interesting question. I don't think we could outgrow the community. I think we can expand beyond the community, but I think in some ways, it's interesting. We are very community based, but at the same time, we are trying to become, and we are, I think, a regional festival. And we certainly have the draw of major talent, and we get press coverage because we're so close to New York. So, you know, there's this sort of fine line you can walk between being a community focused festival, but also being of national significance in terms of programming and the kind of talent we get and the kind of movies that we show. So I think that we have a lot of potential to do that. But the other area for community involvement is we do a lot of partnerships, and we want to continue to do that, especially as we move into the Claridge year-round programming. We have partnered with the Transforming Alliance. I'm going to get the name wrong. And Out Montclair in terms of some of the films that we're showing. So we have a lot of, and we have a partnership with the Nature Conservancy, a lot of programming that we do in partnership with other groups.
I think over the last, well, more than the last couple of years, but especially in the last couple of years between the social justice movements and the lockdown and everything else, discourse and conversation has been a huge part of our existence. And a lot of it has rubbed us raw, and a lot of it has been very necessary. If you can, the group of films that you have coming in this year, how do they sort of lean into that space in terms of generating voices for folks who need them?
Well, that's a really good question. Well, so I think a lot of it is, there are two things. They're the alliances that I talked about in terms of those organizations, but I also think that programmatically, there's a way to give people voices by exposing people to things they don't know about or they haven't been exposed to. That's one of the things that I think is so powerful about the arts in general, but in particular about cinema, because you can, you know, see a movie, say, about an immigrant, and you might see it from a perspective that you've never thought about before. Or you might see, you know, we've got this movie about the Passaic River, and we're showing called The River. I've never thought about the history of the Passaic River, but this woman took a whole 7-day trip down the river and documented it, and it's fascinating. So I mean, that's not really a particular answering your question, particularly in terms of DEI, but and BIPOC. We want to reach these people, but we have partnerships absolutely with certain groups, but we also seek to have lots of diverse programming, right? So we're showing a Dionne Warwick documentary, and I mean, you know, we've got a lot of different voices that are going to be heard through our programming, which is what we try to do all the time. So it's not just people looking at people like themselves.
That's terrific. I'll get you out of here on this. What are you looking forward to in terms of individual events this week? What is the thing, like Bob said, like just the opening night is a big deal for him, and seeing the culmination of all the work in that moment. What events this week are going to be key focuses for you?
Well, I mean, certainly opening night, I think it's going to be, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I think it'll be very emotional to be back in a room with, you know, 1,800 people after COVID, and have our first in-person event and see the faces of those people that support us. But I also personally am really looking forward to seeing my first film in the new Claridge Cinema. It is really great looking, and we couldn't be happier or proud of it. And so I just can't wait to get my fresh bag of popcorn from our new popcorn maker and my first Diet Coke and sit in a movie theater that's clean. It'll be really great.
Even to that extent, there's not very often that you get to sit in a brand new movie theater. It's like moving in an apartment that nobody's ever lived in before. It generally doesn't happen. Usually there's been somebody in that seat before. So enjoy all of it.
To be honest, we did not replace the seats because it's quite expensive, but we deep cleaned them, and we put in new arms, and we put in new headrests. So
you know what? I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
But the popcorn machine is new. That's exciting.
That too.
Yeah.
Listen, thank you so much for your time.
My
Looking forward to
pleasure.
checking out the events this week as well. And yeah, just best of luck with everything.
Thank you for your coverage and your support. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching, everybody. We hope you all get a chance to enjoy some portion of the film festival this week. As a reminder, Our Montclair can be found at MontclairLocal.news/Our Montclair, Facebook.com/MontclairLocal, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And again, we are in fundraising mode, so if you want to help us work towards our $230,000 goal, you can visit us at MontclairLocal.news/donations. Thanks, and I'll see you next episode.